Welcome our viewers at the Red Line Show. My name is Dmytro. With me today, Halyna and Henry Keen. And today we will discuss the Ukrainian accession to the EU. And I propose to begin with Henry, because you know the best what the EU accession could give to the country on the example of Latvia. So how the Latvia changed from 2004 after accession to the EU, and what do you expect for Ukraine after accession?
Right. So I'll cut my answer in three parts. First of all, hello. That was the second part. No, the first part. The second part is yes, I am from Latvia. And the third part, definitely, it gave all of it to Latvia. Latvia is a European country. We have all sorts of a problem of a country that used to be a Soviet country. That's right. But we are now getting rid of it step by step. And Ukraine does it way faster and in way more harmful way because of the war. But I actually want to divert your question, because you have to look at the media. People are talking like ins and outs for Ukraine and the war of Ukraine. Is it good or bad for economy? The Europe have to wake up, guys. You're talking about the war. Putin will invade you, Europe, until you love him, if you will let him. We're not talking about the figures. We're not talking about the money. We're not talking about the economy. We're talking about, goddamn human values. They either work or not. And you have to stick by it. And you have to say that human values have to work all across the human universe. In Ukraine, in Latvia, even in Russia, maybe afterwards, in next century. But still, we have to all fight for this. And then we talk about the figures, then we talk about the economy, then we talk about the politics. We have to survive as a European community. And Latvia, we shed our blood with Soviet Union. People died. But we cannot compare that with what is happening in Ukraine. I cannot compare. It's impossible. It's a totally different world. So Latvia does a lot for us in Ukraine, for you Ukrainians, because we remember what it's like to be a part of the Soviet Union, to be under the Soviet Union, because everything was under the Soviets. That was the whole paradigm about it. And we have to demolish this paradigm first, and then we talk about what's good. Everything is good. We don't have visas. We have one currency. We have all possibilities. We have all the problems of the European Union just as well, like agriculture, for example. You definitely know that, the problem with the Poland.
We've heard a lot about it.
You've seen about it a lot.
Yeah.
But we also have the ways out of it. Europe is more the answers to a lot of questions, because you have a way to use European money, to sort out the European problems.
It's just very few people actually know how many initiatives you can fund when you are in the EU, because I know a lot about exchanges and stuff for the youth, and it gives you a lot of opportunities if you can fund it with the European money. And yes, it supports basically all the values, like freedom, general human values. But sometimes in Ukraine, we actually, it seems a bit comical for us, or a bit funny when we talk about minorities and LGBT rights, because as you said, we have a war. So that's we can't say that we have to forget about it completely, but I see that more and more EU leaders, they say that security has to be first, especially when we talk about security, it's mostly NATO, right? So we usually mention NATO. We have reasons for it. But when you hear claims of Trump, who may be the leader of the US in the future after today's debates in the US, because as we've seen, it was not very successful for Biden. So when we talk about Trump, who always diminishes the influence of NATO, the European Union then has to think more about its own security, in my opinion. It has to come first, and the expenditures on security have to go first as well.
Well, no one was ready for this war.
Yeah.
No one. And no one actually is ready. But Ukraine. Ukraine is one and only country that is more or less ready.
I
Ukraine
also
wasn't ready for,
No.
for this war
Yeah,
in
wasn't, no.
2014. In 2014, it
Oh,
was
Exactly,
yes.
exactly.
But you just, let's remember that in 2014, first of all, we went in the opposite direction from the EU. I've just read an article that it was very...
Did you? I mean, Ukraine didn't. I thought Ukraine was always wanting to be a part of Europe.
Ukraine, yes, but our government didn't.
Yeah,
Right.
that's
Right,
how it all
right.
started, the revolution of dignity, because the government diverted from the EU path, and then people went to protest, and it was actually everyone forgets that it was peaceful at the beginning.
And at the beginning of Revolution of Dignity, it was a protest for the EU accession, not for the
Yes.
for the change the government, for the change the
right.
president. And there are very good video for 2 minutes in the UATV English you could watch. Today will be published about the Revolution of Dignity and why it was the not the coup d'etat, but the Ukrainian dream of EU accession. So subscribe to our UATV English channel, and you will know much more.
Yeah, thank you very much. I will probably try to subscribe to our UATV English, but to let myself know about it, because I don't know much about Ukrainian history, of course, and this is why it's a great pleasure to work with you guys. But anyway, there will be always a part of society that will be against Europe anyway.
Sure,
Even after Iraq's, I mean, you are on the doorstep of Europe. We are on the doorstep.
We've seen it, remember
every
in
country.
Greece,
Yes,
for
in
example,
France,
the
in
United
Germany.
Kingdom. We basically have examples not only being against it or having some issues, but actually exiting it, for good, maybe, we don't know. But yes, but as I heard, I don't know about you, that the United Kingdom has expressed some doubts about its
And just
exiting.
walked out. That's what he did.
Yes.
Well,
And
that's
I remember
the freedom of choice. isn't
people
it?
who were up for exiting the EU, they actually lied often, so they gave just a bit not relevant numbers and figures, for example, to make people want to exit the EU.
Go ahead.
Brexit was many of people think and thought that Brexit was bad. For Ukraine, for me, Brexit was good, because now when the full-scale invasion began, Great Britain made all the decision by their
by
own.
themselves.
So they don't need to talk with Orban.
Yeah, they don't depend on because that's the problem. So here we come to the point where actually in the EU we have countries who, like a Trojan horse, as we also mentioned in our videos, they work, at least some people in these countries, like it was in Ukraine, when you say 2014, 2013, when we had Yanukovych, and many pro-Russian, they were, we always say, maybe it's not very known among foreigners, but we say that if Yanukovych had proceeded with all of his goals,
Right.
we would become a part of Russia, and we would not go to the, we would not continue our path to the European Union, but quietly. So yes, some people say, yes, we wouldn't have war right now, but we would just lose sovereignty, independence, everything that we are now actually fighting for.
I'm sorry, I understand what you mean, but maybe I'm already too Ukrainian for this, to know. I can't imagine Ukrainian society just, sliding to Russia, to oblivion.
But it was.
It was,
Believe
and
us.
So you say this is possible? This was possible?
That was very
possible, because even now in Europe there are many pro-Russian people. So
Oh, I know.
All of
I
this,
know. You tell me
pro-Russian
about it.
media.
I know that's the case in Berlin,
So the closer
for
you
example.
to closer you to the Russia, you are most pro-Russian. So that's why.
And we've always been this buffer zone.
But also vice versa. There are a lot of people right now, maybe not actually acting, but living in Russia, that are not pro-Ukrainian, but pro-European. And when the time comes, they may have its influence in Russia just as well.
No, because the main problem is, as for me, it's that the most of people who voted for Yanukovych, they was for Russia, And the opposition to Yanukovych, it's pro-European people who want to support democracy. And if your society decide to make Yanukovych the president, then you, as a democratic society, you are obey to this decision. You support this. You could make some protest. You could make some democratic issues, some democratic things.
Fight against it in a democratic way.
Yes, but if your government began this movement, then society, pro-European, will be support the
but not
government.
Ukrainians just made a revolution. They said, "No way, we're not going to live there." I mean,
there was too many something black swans, because if there are no no students beaten in
so like we often say that if it hadn't turned out that like tragic when students got beaten and like the blood shed, then it maybe wouldn't have just went away. It was quite
We're
possible.
only speculating
Yes,
what would have been over there.
But I mean, it was like not a democratic regime, but Yanukovych. So he, like, they approved awful, just
I know, but they are still abusing a democracy.
Oh,
I mean, that's what pro-Russian people in my native Latvia, you started the question, that's what they do. They say that Russia need to come over, Russian language, Russian culture. The problem is not with Russian culture. The problem is with the carriers of the Russian culture that do not deserve it. It's not Dostoevsky that actually invaded Ukraine. It's these people who love Putin and the Kremlin. That's what they do.
And they manipulate with this
exactly.
culture.
And then they say it's Dostoevsky, Pushkin and everyone. I mean, Russian culture has nothing to do with Russian people invading Ukraine. That's the problem.
You know, like if the Russian invaders hadn't come to Ukraine and brought Pushkin instead of Shevchenko or Kotlяревsky, then I wouldn't have that much negativity towards Russian literature. But the fact is that they burn my books, Ukrainian books, and put Pushkin and Dostoevsky and Tolstoy instead of them.
Right,
so
well, we might agree on certain point, but my question to you guys as a journalist, what do we do with that part of society when the war is won by Ukraine, when we certainly signed some documents, when the war is stopped, all right? It is a time, it is a respite probably. Maybe we would have to get ready for another war with Russia because you never know. Or you say, we know. But still, what do we do with this part of society that is quiet and doesn't want it and actually is Russian and always will be Russian? What do we do? I have an answer. Education, isn't it not?
No.
In a democratic society...
Send them over to Russia?
No, you shouldn't do anything, because if there are people who are 40 years old, 50 years old, or even elder...
Dmytro's trying to say you just wait them to...
No, because they are not re-educating. They are not re-educating. You couldn't change them.
I'm not talking about them. They're children.
But the children, yes, of course. But another point that these people who support Russia, who are elder, as we
basically
understand,
dream of like re-establishing USSR, just like Putin.
Yes, all of them couldn't do anything for country, because they all think that country must do something to them, not they
everything.
to country.
No, everything.
Yes,
everything to
not
them,
not the
them.
Citizen made something to country, but country must do something to citizen. And if I'm a Russian supporter, for example, and I will do nothing. Because only citizens could do something.
You know, well, this is the whole idea of the Soviet paradigm. Correct me if I'm wrong. The Soviet paradigm tells the people that they are nothing and the government is everything. But I think the government is the tool of the citizen. I use government to make my life easier and better. In terms of war, of course, but I defend no government. I defend the nation. I defend the people.
The values.
The values, exactly. We're getting back to values. So the European unity is full of hardship, economical, political, I mean, you name it. But it's also an answer. It's about the values. And the thing that I wanted to show you is actually that the site the sites in the internet are full of things like that. People are discussing, I quote for you, how bad is the Ukraine war for the European recovery? They're already thinking about their European recovery while the war is not over. So the way of thinking of European politicians is still, it's changing, but very slowly. From the high chairs, they do not understand.
Does your thinking change in very, very quick? No.
Oh, very quickly.
Yes?
It did, indeed. But that's the thing. I am just, I'm 45 years old that when I came here, so I was old. But I had a lot of Ukrainian friends, and I was ready for that. And I was born and raised in a family where my father told me and showed me everything about what Russians actually are. I'm not talking about the Russians as a nationality. I'm talking about the Kremlinites. I'm talking about the R-U-Z-Z-I-N-S. The double Z was in the gene of theirs, their imperial thinking. They wanted to have everything. They don't even know what to do with it. I mean, if you give them the universe, they will devour it. And they don't know what to do. They want Ukraine. Why?
Because that's just the thinking of the empire. It has to increase all the time. If it does not, it usually just disappears.
But that's cancer. That's what cancer does to the body. It's exactly that. Russia is the cancer. The Putin's Russia. And there are a lot of people that are, they're writing to me right now, my God, we don't know how we're going to look into their eyes and into the eyes of Ukrainian friends who lost relatives, who lost future. But
at least they understand. It's like, I'm glad that in terms of like what we can give to Europe,
they're trying to
they try to comprehend it, and it's great that it's been for many of people like a wake-up call, because without this, if we just quietly became a part of Russia in like 2013, 2014, first of all, it could be like the war could begin in Europe earlier. And the consequences, it's again like speculating, but still, when it's like all of the sudden it's so like disruptive, you at least pay attention to it.
Well, I mean, I was pushing you. I was speculating exactly only on one point. I don't want really talk about Latvia and all the privileges of the European Union, because Latvia has a different story. Ukrainian society is changing in all the ways, economically, politically, militarily, in like that. It's important. No other country that I know is changing that fast.
Because
of the war is changing.
It's like you don't have any other options.
Exactly. So we don't have any other way but to Europe right now. There is no way.
Okay, but what can Ukraine give to the EU?
Well, loads of things. I mean, I will give you one example. I just came back, from frontline, from Donbass just recently. So I talked to people, to guys there. But this is a special unit. They're doing drones and everything. I don't know if I'm allowed to say everything right now, but I've asked them. It's a hard job that they do. It is really a job, I was scared, like the wars. I know the Russians were trying to kill us journalists. They were specifically wanted to kill us. They targeted journalists. Their Orlan was hunting us and sitting in the blindage, sitting under the ground. I have seen the guys are working. It's a calm and continuous work to set our country free. And maybe this is when I felt that I am at least a little bit Ukrainian. It makes me proud. And after that, we had a chat. We were talking, and they said we went to Switzerland, we went to Germany, we went to United Kingdom, and people are asking us, Ukrainian soldiers, how are you dealing with these drones? What are the new techniques? What are you doing? What's the engineering of it? Because they don't know, and they are learning. That's one thing. The army that is actually fighting one of the biggest war in this century is going to get into Europe.
It's Ukrainian army could give to EU, but what Ukraine as a country could give to the EU?
Well, that's I'm not a politician actually.
I mean, politically only.
Economically. In human resources, in cultural resources.
Human resources.
Because
you want to joke about human resources?
Well, you know,
Yeah, well, you know.
because okay, Ukrainian
don't want
army
to do.
is strong, is fighting, has very good experience that could give to
Yeah,
the.
I just
another
don't like
country.
you rejecting like the idea of army because it's not
he's
economical
not
or
rejecting.
political.
It is
Yeah, but,
more.
like,
You just want more reasons.
Yes, yeah, but like because for me it's like the priority because the EU is very lousy on defense, very. As for me,
Well, we
like,
can show that. I can give you an example of Germany. I mean, the people, two very high-ranking officers like Scholz, and that was who was the Ministry of Defense at that time. I already don't remember. They don't have any communication with each other. One says that there are Leopard tanks. The other one says no, they are not. They're not ready. We don't have that amount.
Ukrainian politicians has the same problem.
Yeah, that's humanity. That's the problem of humanity.
Okay.
People lie, all right? But what we can do for Ukraine, just like that, I'll give you an example. There are like hundreds of billions of dollars or euros to be invested in infrastructure, in rebuilding the country. There will be a
actually,
lot of
yes.
companies, small businesses and the middle businesses and the big businesses will be interested as soon as the peace comes.
Scholz has already stated that like a lot of companies are ready to invest
They don't
in Ukraine.
exactly. They don't want to go to giving their Tauruses because they don't want to escalate. Well, I mean that's the moral problem, more or less. But give them an option to invest. They will be first here. They will give billions immediately. Right now, there are a lot of companies over here, the ones who have balls, so to say, sorry, that are right now here buying actually Ukrainian companies, investing right now quietly. So when the time comes, they're on the top of the list.
But why then the politicians, European, don't make this time make closer?
Oh, okay. Everything is a structure. And this structure, European structure, is actually quite fat and quite lazy. It always was. Take the the First War, the Second World War, and now let's call it the Third World War, all right? It is all the same. They were trying to negotiate. They don't want to lose their high chairs. They don't want to lose their education, their lousy but fancy armies. You know, like Leopard tanks are really mighty war machines when they move.
Yeah, when they exist.
Well, and when they exist, and F-16 should be there 2 years ago, and not goddamn right now. I understand that it's not about F-16s. It's just the maintenance of F-16. We need like everything for that, engineers, pilots, and everything. It's billions and I don't know, maybe trillions of dollars. But if we would have the situation right now that we're having right now, back then, 2 years ago, we will be already stopped. There won't be war.
But maybe European enterprises want to trade with Russia, not with Ukraine, because Russia is bigger market. It's better.
Well,
maybe,
they really
Dima.
did. So that's why they.
Well, let's make us more interesting.
They did not want to lose it immediately. That's why they always try something before they cut it off completely.
You cannot play victim all the time, you know?
It's not
we don't have any
now.
other choice. They go to Europe, but then we have to sit by the table and decide what we are putting on this table for these people. We're giving them our bravery, our valor, that we defended, our honor and our sovereignty. We give an absolutely amazing IT. I mean, IT here is like 100 years ahead of what I had in Germany. Trust me on that.
Like,
sorry,
but
Germans, I love you guys, but come on. And all things we have to think about it.
But there are Indian IT.
Yeah,
it's more cheaper. It's more cheaper.
I'm talking about the cheaper, but it's already a lot of money invested in Ukraine. It's already a different country. I'm not ready to answer your questions. It's not because there are no answers. Maybe I just don't know them. I'm talking about the things that I know. I'm talking to actually military guys. I know what they can give to armies, and armies are ready to pay checks all day long for this experience. All day long. I'm talking about the IT. I'm talking about the country has to be raised from the ashes, and there's billions, if not trillions, of dollars, and there's decades to go for that. And the power in Russia will change eventually, at some point. Yeah, and when they will see what Ukraine become in Europe by that time, that will be the very mighty example. But first, we have to win the war. And then there comes the politicians that are not actually fighting, you know. They're not families are okay. Rafael Grossi comes to Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plants and answers the question, Mr. Grossi, have you ever seen Russian mines on the nuclear power plant? And he says, yes, but that's for safety. For safety. Have you ever, come on, I mean, have you ever seen...
Do you not know that mines are like used for...
No, that's a special Russian mines exactly for
Safety.
goddamn, for safety. I'm sorry.
Safety.
No, I know the sound, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, but like I would pry in your conversation, first of all, defense. A country in war, even with less money and like less technologies, is still much more valuable than countries like fancy countries but with no experience. Right. You can do whatever you want with that, but I agree with the part that like they have a lot to offer to European partners and stuff. And also, do you like, I'm sorry, but are you all forgetting the jokes about European bureaucracy? The jokes about Deutsche Bahn that never is on time, but Ukrzaliznytsia with this, which is under shellings all the time and still manages to come in time. So like I have this feeling like Ukrainians sometimes have this deep feeling of, you know, a bit of like being a bit undervalued and defended by the fact that like, oh yeah, like I am not joking. I know that's like from my friends, that's they are like, they go to Europe like often because of the youth exchanges and stuff. And they sometimes are asked whether we have like a goddamn, I don't know, sky, like, sorry, okay, that's a dumb one, but like electricity and stuff.
Power, yeah.
I'm sorry, that's not even funny, because the technologies in Ukraine, it's not only about IT. Like when people hear about DIA, it's even moveton for me to mention it at this point.
You see official statement that Ukraine must adopt 3,000 laws to make EU.
That's like now so Dima, you like to ask questions. So now I want to ask you a question.
Here we go.
Europe likes bureaucracy, laws, transparency, and stuff. Still, we know that they have a lot of scandals themselves, stealing money and doing some shady things. But like, I would ask whether European love for bureaucracy could like create problems for us in terms of war. Yeah, when we have to actually do and manage things very, you know, effectively. And whether they are ready actually to sometimes maybe, you know, divert from this very strict rules. Laws, yeah, of course, legislation, you have to unify it. You cannot avoid that, obviously. But maybe they can simplify some of the operations and actual processes.
But European bureaucracy is something thing that made the rules. It's bureaucracy. It's the rules. So you couldn't do something in your own mind. You must do in some specific way.
Not exactly. Not exactly. This is why every country in European Union passed this process. Every country discussed these 35 steps or whatever it was. Every country tuned it to its own reality. It's not like that. You have to do it that way. No. UK was maybe the hardest part of it, but then when they didn't like it, they just exited it. So every country, it's the matter of diplomacy. It's the matter of economical and political influence. It's the matter of personal influence. Like someone with Dmytro Kuleba, who is the highest ranked professional, comes and discusses it, and he has the trust to change something, to tune it up closer to Ukrainian reality.
Yeah, that it's like
it's not like you have to do it. It's not the Soviet Union.
But the thing that Ukrainian reality is that our politicians made laws in such a way that they could use it in future. And European diplomats, European politicians don't like this.
Of course.
And that's why we have some struggle between
and there is a lot of struggle ahead. You're absolutely right. What are you suggesting? What do?
We cannot avoid that because we did not just, let's be honest, we did not just adopt laws that are favorable for someone. They were basically lobbied by some oligarchs. So yeah, now we have to work on it. Now we have
So
to.
we actually don't have these laws. It's not laws.
We do. We have to do homework on the problems because you cannot even name it a proper
but
law.
Ukrainian oligarchs will fight against this.
Of course, I mean, who would know? Who wouldn't?
Well,
it's the question of power. But
Yeah.
now,
What is greater, an agreement with the EU or an oligarch at this point?
so now, I mean, there is no discussion only in Russia. Russia, no discussion. It's the Putin way. We have to fight our way in diplomatic way through these 35, because nobody wants to change its own system for Ukraine. Nobody. The only best friend for Ukraine is Ukraine. Guys, be honest. Did you ever care for African wars, for Tutsi killing Hutu and vice versa? 1,100,000, more than 1 million people died. They were killing each other. We didn't know much about. But now
Was I even born?
Yeah, well, okay, I'm sorry.
So I have an excuse.
But my point is that, yes, we would have to fight through this way. We would have to do all possible to make this European system not very comfortable for Ukraine. Trust me, I know a bit on the example of Latvia, because it's like we had a lot of things that we changed that was not favorable for Latvia, because some politicians were crooked, because they were crooks, because they were stupid. Because they were human.
Some of the decision is a political negative, and not all Ukrainian
Absolutely, and maybe some decisions will be politically negative, but the diplomacy is about to make this decision compromise as close to Ukrainian reality as possible. And Ukraine now has a lot of leverages. Winning the war, being the country that actually spills its own blood for the human values the rest of the world only goddamn talks about.
I actually have a great
That's a
example.
currency.
I have a great example for you. So, like, I mean, when we have something that we don't like, like joining the EU, it's not about law. Like that, I'd like to change. So, if we manage to, get rid of these laws adopted because of the oligarchs, that's actually great. Which I do not like is, for example, the 11 points, like from Hungary, which is very dubious. And the points are bad, and we actually had a problem that Ukrainian government did not announce them. So they did not inform the people of Ukraine about the contents of these 11 points. So as I know, the media have already, they revealed it. So, and I also know that they have already discussed some of them and got rid of some of them.
You don't have any other choice.
Because
it's
they
just one planet.
They are just ridiculous at some of them. Like Hungary sometimes demands minorities is very, very important. But that's what I mean when I say that what can do harm to Ukraine, like Europe can do some harm to Ukraine, because minorities is great. European values is great. Hungary manipulating Ukraine by very dubious, and the entire EU, by this question of minorities, and demanding to actually claim the entire Zakarpattia Hungarian. That's not about minorities. That's when the diplomacy comes. And we have to fight for it, not to allow it.
Everyone knows it. That's the human thing. We know there is no ideal political system. All political systems are more or less bad. Well, tell me, do you know the ideal political system?
Russian one?
Yeah, well, it's not political.
Okay.
Depends on the point of view.
It depends on what's your name, So,
If you're Vladimir Vladimirovich.
Well, Vladimir Vladimirovich is all right because it's his system. But anyway, I mean, who is Putin? He's the guy who, in his 70s, who decided instead of, come on, guys, he has all the money in the world, right? And what he decides to do...
Such a waste, right?
It's just did this 20, 30 years that he's still...
He decided to
become great.
To become great, yes.
Yeah, it's the greatness that's in their minds. It's the venomous greatness. What greatness? You can't manage it. You're still driving German Mercedes. Jesus Christ. Come on, but... Hi, Germans. That's my thing.
The highlight of the podcast.
Highlight of the podcast. Sorry, Germans. Here you go, Germans. You just repaid my bills. So, talking about the Ukraine and Europe, there will be a hell of a lot of things that will be difficult to come through to a situation, a position when it will be comfortable for Ukraine to be there. But the only thing that you can make others to be comfortable is when you're powerful. You're a powerful economy, you have powerful diplomats, and you have won the war, and we can do this. Even if this is a victory, and this is, not just a pause, but a just and long-lasting peace. That's what we're talking about. We're just propagating this. But this is the right thing to do. When it's just and long-lasting peace, then we call it a victory. We would have to say to our army, hey guys, you have to be ready always when we're talking about Russia. Always. But we can start to build new Ukraine. And the more and more, we're only asking from the world right now. But then we will be starting giving something, then we will see what it is. I don't have any answers right now, but at least 2 or 3 things that I gave to you, I think are quite reasonable. I mean, this is the experience. Militarily, the military experience, the economical experience, just as well, how to survive in the mess like this. For example.
Honestly, I think that as we see the economy right now during the war, that thanks to the cooperation between Europe and Ukraine, it's not a catastrophe.
Oh, it's not at all.
We are maintaining it quite well, obviously thanks to Europe as well, and it just shows and proves the fact that it has to, continue this way. It's just as simple as that. Because I'm not a big economical expert, but from what I see, as like if it goes this way, it's not.
Well, Ukraine is a brand right now. Okay, it is a brand.
How long it will be?
Not long, not for long, not for long. Absolutely, we have to seize the moment. We have carpe diem. We have to do all we can. This is why the thing is, we have to multiply diplomats like who's the best diplomat, do you think, in Ukraine right now? Let's say foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba?
In Ukraine?
Yeah.
Right now, yes.
You're right.
Yes, here we go.
That's the best answer you can get.
Let's just cut this.
As I do, very diplomatic.
Let's cut this question and the answer out because it's too obvious. But I agree with you. Come on, guys. Well, I mean, call it a pathetic pathos if you want, but I agree.
I also like Kислitsa.
Yeah, Kислitsa. I've seen how he works in New York. He's super professional, and he doesn't treat Zelensky as a. Zelensky is a president. He treats him as a president of his state.
Once again, professional.
Exactly. And that's how but I also saw the other point. They are PR managers of the office of the president are not always good enough. I mean, they're treating him like he's not, I don't think if he's asking that treatment from them.
Yeah, we cannot say that he's asking for that, but yeah, it's obvious that some people just created this, what do you call it, this atmosphere, around him. And sometimes that's the problem. You have to think about people around you, about your team, because one not really professional person in your team could lead to many repercussions.
Well, to avoid these repercussions, we have to have a very good diplomatic team that is working right now abroad. When the time comes, and it is very close, and we have to sell the idea of European Ukraine as expensive as possible.
Well, I suppose that Ukrainian diplomats will do this in near future, in future not so near, because as European officials said that all the steps Ukraine will do only in 2030, so it's a work for years. But for today,
yeah, but for you guys, I will still be fine.
Young.
To say, yeah.
What do you mean? But too old for you? Or what? I mean, in 2030, we're going to be.
Yes, you will be. You will be.
So Biden today and Trump. That's how you're gonna look like.
You are an orange one.
Yeah, I'm the orange one.
Yeah, good one. Yeah.
Okay,
like
so I
anyway,
propose.
I'm happy to take this walk with you and see what happens.
The same
Yes,
to you.
it was Henry King Halyna Babenko, Dmytro. Subscribe to UATV English and see you very soon.